Austin, 2:30-35. The sun rises over the Texas Capitol. Crowds fill the streets, flags waving, chants echoing. Texas forever! Freedom for the Lone Star State. What began as a political protest has now become something far bigger. After years of disputes with Washington over taxes, energy policy, border control, and federal overreach, the unthinkable has happened. Texas has declared independence. Again. In a dramatic midnight session, the Texas legislature votes 104-46 in favor of the Sovereignty Act. By dawn, Governor Maria Hensley signs the declaration. The United States of America, for the first time in nearly 2 centuries, is no longer united. The news spreads like wildfire. From Dallas to Houston, fireworks light up the sky. But in Washington, there's no celebration, only silence. The president calls it an illegal rebellion. The Pentagon calls it a national crisis. And the world watches. Act 1. The Seeds of Secession. To understand this moment, you have to go back years, decades even. For generations, Texas has prided itself on being different. It was once its own republic, the Republic of Texas, 1836-1845, before joining the U.S. under a unique agreement that allowed it to keep certain rights, including the right to divide itself into multiple states if it ever chose to. But by the 2030s, tension had reached a breaking point. Washington's energy mandates crippled Texas's oil economy. Border conflicts escalated, with federal troops clashing with Texas Rangers. Economic disputes over taxes and immigration policy deepened divisions. And a new political movement, Texit, gained millions of followers. Then came the spark. A federal Supreme Court ruling forced Texas to dismantle a massive private energy grid project, one that could have made it fully energy independent. To Texans, that was it. Their identity, their economy, and their freedom, all under attack. The movement surged overnight. When the legislature passed the Sovereignty Act, polls showed 68% of Texans in favor of independence. And on July 4, 2035, poetic timing, Texas officially seceded. Act 2. The Fallout. Within 24 hours, Washington responds. This so-called independence has no legal standing, the president declares from the Oval Office. Texas remains part of the United States, and we will ensure the rule of law is upheld. But on the ground, the situation spirals fast. Federal agencies are forced to evacuate. U.S. troops stationed in Fort Hood and Lackland Air Force Base receive conflicting orders. Washington says stay put. Austin says leave immediately. Roadblocks spring up across Interstate 35. The border with Oklahoma becomes a military checkpoint. Within days, the U.S. sends 10,000 National Guard troops to the northern border, not to invade, but to contain. Oil shipments stop. Banks freeze transactions between Texas and the rest of the U.S., and Wall Street panics. The dollar dips, and global markets tremble. Meanwhile, in Austin, the new Republic of Texas moves quickly. Governor Hensley signs emergency decrees, establishes the Texas Defense Force, merging the National Guard, Texas Rangers, and private militias. Declares the Texas dollar, a digital currency backed by oil reserves. Nationalizes key energy assets, Exxon Texas, Lone Star Gas, and Permian Basin refineries. Opens trade talks with Mexico, Canada, and, shockingly, China. In less than 2 weeks, Texas becomes one of the fastest-forming independent nations in modern history. Act 3. The world reacts. The international response is chaos wrapped in fascination. Mexico, once wary, immediately opens negotiations, seeing Texas as both a rival and an opportunity. China sends quiet signals of support, offering investment in exchange for oil and access to ports like Galveston. Russia calls it the beginning of the end for American imperial dominance. And the European Union? Split. Some condemn it, others see it as America's karma. But the biggest reaction comes from inside the U.S. states like Florida and Tennessee issue statements supporting Texas's right to self-determination. California calls it treason. Congress descends into chaos. Some push for immediate sanctions. Others warn that sending troops could ignite a second civil war. On social media, Texit trends worldwide. Patriots, separatists, conspiracy theorists, everyone's got an opinion. But underneath the noise, one chilling truth emerges. If Texas can leave, others might follow. Act 4. The Economic Shockwave. By month 2, the U.S. economy starts to feel it. Texas isn't just any state. It's the 9th largest economy in the world on its own. It produces 40% of U.S. oil, 25% of natural gas, and leads in manufacturing, cattle, and tech. Without it, the U.S. faces energy shortages in the Midwest and East Coast, food price spikes due to disrupted exports, a sharp drop in military readiness. Many of America's key bases and defense contractors are Texan. Washington imposes economic sanctions, freezing Texas's foreign assets and threatening to block all exports. But Austin hits back harder. They shut down pipelines running north, cutting off energy to half the country. The Texas dollar, though unstable, surges in value, backed by oil. Within weeks, global investors start buying it, betting on the new republic's survival. And for the first time, the world starts to whisper, maybe Texas can actually pull this off. Act 5. The Breaking Point. By late fall, the standoff is on the edge of violence. At Fort Bliss, near El Paso, U.S. forces refuse to vacate. Texan militias surround the base, demanding their surrender. A tense 48-hour standoff begins. Drones hover overhead. Tanks line the desert. And then, a shot rings out. No one knows who fired first. In seconds, chaos, gunfire, smoke. A fireball rises from a fuel depot. 20 soldiers are killed, 10 from each side. The world watches in horror as the first blood of the Second American Crisis is spilled. The president calls for calm. So does Governor Hensley. But the genie is out of the bottle. Now, there's no going back. Act 6. The Brink of War, El Paso, 2036. The desert is quiet. Too quiet. The smoke from Fort Bliss still rises on the horizon, a black scar against the dawn. For the first time in American history, U.S. troops and former U.S. citizens have exchanged fire on American soil. The president appears on live television. The use of force against federal troops will be treated as an act of rebellion. Texas must stand down. In Austin, Governor Hensley fires back, "We are not rebels. We are Texans, free and sovereign. Any attack on us will be met with equal force." Across the country, fear spreads faster than truth. National Guard units in Oklahoma and Louisiana move closer to the border. Texan militias begin fortifying highways and airports. Satellite images show armored columns mobilizing in both directions. The U.S. 1st Armored Division, once based in Texas, now advances from New Mexico, heading east. At the same time, the Texas Defense Force, nearly 150,000 strong, digs in around San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas. The war that no one wanted now feels inevitable. Act 7. Battle Lines. It begins with the skies. American drones, MQ-25s and Reapers, start reconnaissance runs over Texas territory. In response, Texas deploys newly acquired Turkish Bayraktar drones, purchased through backdoor deals with Middle Eastern intermediaries. For hours, the skies above the Rio Grande hum with activity. Spy versus spy. Then, at 400 hours, the first strike. A U.S. cyberattack cripples Texas's new digital currency network, freezing millions in transactions. In retaliation, Texas hackers, some reportedly aided by Russian cyber teams, take down parts of the U.S. power grid across Arkansas and Louisiana. The cyber war becomes the invisible front. No missiles, no planes, just silence and darkness. But soon, the silence breaks. On the second night, U.S. artillery units fire warning shots across the Red River. Texas responds by mobilizing its air assets, aging F-16s, privately owned F-5s, and even modified civilian jets. But here's the twist. Most of the skilled pilots are former U.S. Air Force veterans, Texans who refuse to leave. and they know the playbook. Over the plains of Wichita Falls, two F-22 Raptors from the U.S. Air Force engage a pair of Texan F-16s. The fight lasts less than 3 minutes. One Texan jet is shot down. The other escapes into a thunderstorm. The world calls it the lightning battle. For Americans, it's tragedy. For Texans, it's martyrdom. Act 8. The Siege of Houston. As tensions peak, Washington authorizes Operation Union Dawn, a containment and blockade strategy designed to choke off Texas's economy without full invasion. The Gulf of Mexico becomes the front line. The U.S. Navy deploys 2 carrier strike groups, the USS Ford and the USS Truman, just off Galveston. Their goal: enforce a maritime no-fly zone and halt all foreign ships entering Texas ports. But Texas anticipated this. Weeks earlier, they struck a historic deal with Saudi Arabia and the UAE. In exchange for oil access and investment, the Gulf monarchies send a fleet of merchant tankers under neutral flags. These ships, escorted by armed private security vessels, dare to run the blockade. When the first Saudi tanker, the Riyadh Star, crosses into the restricted zone, U.S. Navy radar picks it up. A tense standoff unfolds at sea. Fighter jets circle overhead, missiles are locked, and for 30 minutes, the world holds its breath. But Washington blinks first. Rather than risk global outrage, the U.S. lets the ship pass. It's a symbolic victory for Texas, one that electrifies its supporters worldwide. Oil begins flowing again, and with every barrel, Texas buys itself more time. Act 9. A Nation Divided. Back in Washington, the political fallout is massive. Congress is paralyzed. Half demand military action. The other half warn of a modern civil war. Public opinion fractures along lines not seen in 150 years. Blue states demand unity. Red states whisper about autonomy. In Dallas, a crowd of 1 million gathers for Independence Day 2.0. In New York, protesters flood Times Square chanting, "Keep America Whole." The tension isn't just military, it's psychological. Families split, businesses relocate. The U.S. stock market plunges another 10%. And through it all, the Texas government pushes forward, drafting its new Constitution of the Republic of Texas. It enshrines gun rights, oil rights, digital privacy, and border sovereignty. The capital stays in Austin. The national motto: "Don't mess with freedom." Foreign investors start circling like hawks. China offers infrastructure loans. The UK proposes trade recognition. And shockingly, the United Nations votes to hold emergency talks on whether to recognize Texas as an independent state. The US vetoes it immediately, but the world has taken notice. The Lone Star is shining on the global stage once again. Act 10. The Turning Point. January 2036, 6 months since secession. The standoff has cost billions, and both sides are running out of patience. Then, the unexpected happens. A massive cyber attack hits the Federal Reserve System. Markets freeze. Digital transactions halt. Investigators trace the source back to a private server in Austin. Washington goes into panic mode. The president authorizes Operation Lone Resolve, a precision strike on what intelligence claims is the Texas Cyber Command Center. At 2:30 a.m., a U.S. drone fires a single missile. It hits a compound north of Waco. The building is obliterated. But hours later, evidence emerges. The strike killed 37 civilians, not hackers. The compound was a data storage firm. The backlash is instant. Protests erupt nationwide, not in support of Washington, but against it. People are horrified that the federal government just bombed its own citizens. The narrative flips. Suddenly, Texas isn't the villain anymore. Act 11. The Diplomatic Gambit. Governor Hensley seizes the moment. In a televised address watched by 200 million people, she says, "We do not seek war. We seek recognition. Let us negotiate, not bleed." Behind closed doors, secret talks begin, mediated by Switzerland and Mexico. The conditions are simple. Texas will halt all cyber operations. The U.S. will lift sanctions and recognize Texas as a special economic territory. Both sides agree to a 5-year non-aggression pact. It's not independence yet, but it's survival and legitimacy. After months of negotiation, Washington agrees in principle. The deal is signed in Geneva on March 2, 2036, the anniversary of Texas's original Declaration of Independence. The moment is poetic. History has come full circle. Crowds in Austin celebrate as fireworks fill the night sky. For the first time in a year, the guns go silent. Act 12. The Lone Star Republic rises. By 2037, the Republic of Texas stands tall. It's officially recognized by 12 nations, including Mexico, Saudi Arabia, and Japan. The U.S. hasn't fully acknowledged its independence, but relations stabilize into a cold, tense peace. The new Texas economy thrives, powered by oil, renewable energy, and a booming tech sector. Houston becomes the financial hub of the South, Austin, its silicon capital, and Dallas, its industrial heart. The Texas Defense Force transforms into a professional military, complete with new fighter jets, a spaceport outside Midland, and alliances across Latin America. But the government knows one thing: freedom comes with a cost. Terror threats rise along the border. Spy drones from Washington buzz the skies daily. And within Texas, political factions begin to emerge. Those who want peace with the U.S., and those who dream of expanding the Republic further. Epilogue: The Future of Freedom, 2038. 3 years after the breakaway, a lone flag flies over the Texas Capitol. A single white star. Tourists from around the world visit the new republic, curious to see how it works. To some, Texas is a miracle, proof that liberty still burns bright. To others, it's a warning, a fracture that nearly destroyed America. In Washington, historians debate endlessly. Was Texas's independence a betrayal, or the beginning of a new American evolution? No one can agree. But one thing is certain: the world will never look at the Lone Star the same way again. Because for the second time in history, Texas stood alone and survived.